Hey there, folks. So, last episode was the initial kickoff project setup, and since then, all I've done is I have added in source control for the project. You can see it's now up here connected into my Git. This episode, we're going to work on the player character. That is going to be a module, and then it's actually going to be part of our character module, but that's something we'll deal with a little later in the series, the full-blown stuff. But to get things started, what we're going to do is, now this is at least unique to Rider as far as I'm aware. I haven't checked this in Visual Studio. But to add a module in, what we're going to be doing is right-clicking on the project. Actually, I think we're going to right-click on source. So yeah, right-click on our source folder, add Unreal module. Now, for anyone who's not sure, I'll quickly go through this. A module is basically a plugin for code, and it also works in the editor. But what it does is it helps to keep your code separated, and that was one of the issues I had with the last attempt at this series. My code was not separated. So, anyways, in here we're going to leave the location as source. I'm not going to change anything there. The module name is going to be TF characters, plural. We're going to leave it runtime default, and we're going to have the default target files added. Click OK there. Now it's going to make a couple of changes to the project we're going to look at. First and foremost, it adds in these two files, TF characters H and CPP, so that's a header and source file. And these are, I didn't open the source file. These are the code level things you need to take into consideration if your module affects the editor, things like that. With the modules I'm doing, at least for now, there is no requirement for anything in here. So we can just we can just leave these two closed out. And the other one, as you can see, it was added here, but in our target file, so tf.target.cs and tfeditor.target.cs, it is added in this little function here. Private void register modules created by Rider, extra module names dot add new string array TF characters. And this is just saying, hey, load in this module. And as we add more modules, this is going to grow. Now, what do we need to add here? Well, this is, as I said, for the player character, and ultimately it's going to be all characters. It's going to be AI, that's going to be our humanoid NPC AI, our animal NPC AI, things like that. It's all going to fall into this module. But for now, it's just going to be the player character. Well, the first thing we're going to want to do is in the characters module, we're going to add an Unreal class. We want this to be a public-private. And when I say public-private, for anyone who's not sure, there is three types. There's in the root of the folder you're creating it in. There's public, which is a public header, private source. And then there's private, which is private header, private source. We want public-private. We want this to be of a character class for the parent, so it's deriving from character. And in this case, I'm going to be calling this one TF character base. Now, much like the previous series, I am going to be having the derived class set up for my characters. However, I'm changing how I'm doing it. Just simply because there was a lot of logic that ended up on TF character, like our base custom class, that was for AI, that was also being applied to the player character. And we don't want that. That was one of the things I was sort of a little upset with myself about, is I added all this extra logic to a class that I derived in the wrong way, where I forked off in the class hierarchy. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, this is for the player character, so we do need to add another one. Now in here, I could right click on TF character base, add Unreal class, but it defaults to UObject. The reason being is this isn't a registered class in Rider as one that can be pulled in by default by the engine. So I'm just going to right click again on the TF character folder, add Unreal class, make sure to select public private, or public in this case. I'm going to go over to all classes, TFC, TF character base is what we want to select. And this is going to be TF player character. Now, this is going to be down to your own personal preference with your naming conventions. In my case, as I mentioned in the last episode, I'm wanting to use that prefix of TF for everything, which is why the project itself actually has TF as the project instead of the fall. But now that we have these two derived classes, as I mentioned, I'm not going to go into the AI classes yet. We're going to work on our player character. So with the player character, there's a few things we want to do, and we're going to want to pull that over from, well, I'm actually going to be pulling it over from the first pass of the player character that we did last season. And the reason for that is just because I have that open on my other monitor because I don't want to miss anything. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to clean up my class here. Now, again, so this is something that was brought up. I'll explain why I do it this way versus how Epic recommends it. So, first and foremost, when you're formatting your header file, Epic recommends you start with public at the top. The reason being is for non-developers, they're going to want to see what are the public functions first. I fully understand that one. My big hang up there is Epic doesn't follow that process themselves. If you look at their code, they've got stuff all over the place. I personally prefer private, protected, public, because I just look for the declaration of private, protected, or public, depending what I'm looking for. But the other one being is by default, everything's private. So I could put in a function, a variable here, and it's automatically private. So by default, I leave it that way. That it starts as private, you want to forcibly declare protected or public. And then I just do it in decrementing value. No, I don't want to do that. Now, technically, you could go through and do this, but for some reason, I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. I like to leave the generated ustruct body, things like that, at the top before the private declaration. Personal preference. Do it. Format it how you want. But anyway, so getting things sorted out here, the first thing we need for our player character is going to be the camera boom, the cameras, things like that. So we need to, as with other classes, have some four declarations here. Spring arm cam component. Okay, so I'm going to copy these and pull them over. And then we need to grab that from... So again, this is the camera boom and follow camera is stuff that is just there in our player character. If you take a look, camera boom, follow camera. Again, I'm just pulling this over. I have the previous project open up on another monitor. I'm not doing anything. I'm trying not to do what I've complained about of the whole, here's perfect code. I'm just grabbing things so I can don't forget something. Now, one thing I want to do here is I want to change follow camera to third person camera. Reason being is to match first person, and I want that clarity. The reason being for this is I have some conceptual ideas in my head of how I want to do things like human NPC interaction. I want to be able to have like a camera that's looking at somebody's face that you can switch to, if that makes sense. So next thing, what do we need? Well, we need our inputs. Now, I'm going to follow the process I did last time. I'm going to use regions. And what regions are, for anyone who is not sure, it is an ability to, if I could type, basically just organize your code a little better and hide things within it. And again, I'm just going to pull this over from our previous project. Again, this is just the default stuff that was already there. And to show you what regions do, literally I can just collapse and hide that. And it just tells me, hey, this is my input stuff. Now we do have a bunch of other actions, things like sprint, interact, stuff like that, but I'm not going to add those in yet. The only one I'm going to add is our toggle perspective. This was one of the custom ones we added last time. And the reason being is I want to be able to switch between third person and first person. Okay, what else do we need? So to go with toggle perspective, we do need our flag to show, are we in first person? So now that we have that, the next thing we need is our functions for moving, looking, and in the toggling perspective. So I'm going to grab those and move them over. Now, for ease, I've just copy and pasted these, which has left me with lean. I'm going to get rid of that. And then toggle perspective. Now, I am not going to be doing what Epic have done with theirs. It's the wrong one. It's on the player character, where they have move and do move. I personally do not see how this is useful other than it's exposing like a function or two functions to code and one function to blueprint. And the function to blueprint just has, like, where's do move, has two inputs for floats instead of the input action value. I'm assuming the whole purpose for that is so this isn't required. You don't need to do something like this through through blueprints. But because I'm doing everything through code, I'm not going to be doing the different move, do move. There's probably other reasons for that, but I don't see the need for it. Begin play, set up our input. We got our constructor. Let's add some of our getters and rename these. Get third person camera. Return third person camera. And then I'm going to follow this up with a... Actually, do we have that defined at the top, camera component? Yes, we do. We don't need these classes in here. Third person, first person. I do like how Rider automatically goes, oh, we've got this one already. Okay, let's do this for the first person. I believe that is everything we need right now. So let's get these functions created. So for anyone wondering, I've just highlighted the 4 function declarations that haven't been created and they're not defined. Right click, go through your normal create function, create definition flow, and it gives you the option to create them all at once. It's one of the nice quirks of Rider, or nice perks of Rider I've found. So in here, let's go through and sort out a few things. Now, the first thing you're going to notice, our constructor is incredibly tiny. We need to set up quite a bit of stuff for that. So I'm going to, again, look over at my previous attempt at this. And I'm going to say that a lot because I want to be clear. I am using pre-written code here, but that's because I had no issues with how the player character class itself was constructed. It was the nested or the class hierarchy that I had created was my problem there. So let me just grab the entire constructor for what is currently added. Now, there is a lot of stuff that is missing because we are missing includes, but I want to add in something. Primary actor tick dot b tick even when paused equals false. Now, I'm adding this in now. And to explain what this is basically you have the ability to tell the engine, pause the game. And when that happens, your tick type changes. Where is it down here? And, well, I won't say it changes per se, but the engine handles them in a different way. And basically this says, okay, when the game's paused, don't tick this actor. So, right click, show context menu, include definition for U capsule component. Yep. Get character movement, include definition, new character. Game framework character movement component. Yep, that's the one we need. Spring arm, we need that one. So I'm just going through making sure all of these are in. Okay, obviously follow camera is third person camera. So I'm going to copy and paste that to replace all of this. Add in that, and that's fixed all of our errors there. And this is just our basic character setup. Again, if we look at the one that came with the project, very similar. They've got it a little more segregated in the notes, but a lot of these comments I feel are overkill. So, okay, so move. Well, this one, again, I'm just going to copy and paste. Because right now we're just starting the foundation of... Oh, no, it doesn't like that. Where is it? Input value. It's its own header. That'll load in a second. Input action value. Why are you not liking that? Oh, we're missing a module reference. So this is something to cover with going through my modular approach here. You're about to cancel. In here, the tfcharacters.build.cs that is created, this uses the pretty much identical approach to the main projects build. And you can see we have public dependencies to add. So I'm going to take enhanced. Where are you? There it is. The enhanced input component one. And we're going to add that into our public dependencies for this module. And what this is saying is this module can load in the header files for enhanced input. This module itself does not need slate, so I'm going to get rid of that. So now with that out of the way, this error will go away. Subsequently, this error will go away. So I'm going to let that keep running for a second here while I finish up with a look and the other functionalities. So look is going to be the same thing we copy over. Player jump, I'm going to be leaving right now. And what's the next one? Toggle perspective. How did we do that? All right, so I'm going to just copy this code over and then we're going to run through it. So first and foremost, this is third person. So this is pretty basic. Again, I don't have all of the same logic I had from the last character. You're going to notice there's things like we don't have our configuration for third person enabled or block character input, stuff like that. And that's going to be coming down the line. But in here, basically, we have our little Boolean flag that we're inverting in first person. So what we're saying, in first person equals the opposite of what it currently is. And then we're doing a check. And we're saying so if we're no longer in first person, We're going to deactivate our first person camera, activate the third person camera, change our pitch yaw roll. Third person camera. Well, if we are in first person, we deactivate the third person, activate first person, and change our pitch yaw roll. Now here it's grayed out that final return. It's technically not needed because this is a void. So I like to leave this in, even though it's not needed, simply because it's clear that you're saying, okay, we are done, or we're meant to be done at this point. No code was accidentally deleted, because to explain that, so if I don't have return here, and all of a sudden we have a bit of a quirk, something's broken within the toggle perspective functionality, I don't know, well, did I accidentally have, let's say, I'm just going to do first person, because we're in, trying to think, what could we be doing here? Well, I'm not going to waste time. But basically, was there additional code under here that somehow accidentally got deleted? Was that the problem? Now, this is just something I like to do personally to avoid that potential confusion. This final return, as I said, it is not needed. That's why Rider has it grayed out. I think it even removes it at compile time. But for the purpose of readability in the code, I like to include these just so like anyone looking at this knows distinctly, okay, after this he was 100% done with his code. That's the only reason I do that. All right, so the next one, set up player input. This one is going to be, again, pretty much just copy and pasted, because it is a little overkill. I'm going to add everything in, and I'm just going to be commenting out functions or bindings we don't need, simply because I want to keep them here as a reminder. So we are missing the header for that, which will fix this one. And we were missing the header for that, which will fix that one. If we go up, we'll see there's two new enhanced input. Actually, just added the same one. Enhanced input component was added for both. Why are you complaining about subsystem? Maybe that's its own header. I'm going to get rid of this to do. And I'm going to comment these. Well, I'm going to move toggle perspective up so that it is at the top. And then I'm going to comment out these other ones, because these are to-dos. Reminder for future functionality. And that's the only reason for this. So, okay, subsystem, was that its own header? Yes, it was, that's why. Okay, I'm going to go add that one in as well. Which fixes that one. Okay, so at a basic level, we are almost 100% done with setting up the player character. The next thing, or the last thing we want to do, is our jump. Now, the reason why I left this one to later in, well, to the end here, is it has functionality that calls back to a parent function. So I'm going to copy this over. And we're going to run through this quickly. So it's calling ATF character can jump, and ATF character has jumped. For anyone who followed the previous series, this one is functionality that was for basically to check, can the player character jump? Also, can NPCs jump if they're a jumping class? Like a human can jump So the player and the NPCs can jump. So we need to add these into our player or to our character class. Minimize these. But it's not ATF character either. Sorry, it's character base. So first of all, we're going to fix that here. We're just going to pass that in and pass that in. So this is something else that I'm going to be changing. The can jump is actually a function that if you look, and you can't see me pointing, but I can't move my mouse, the very bottom of this window, it's actually in character.h. So I'm going to be changing this one to can character jump. These two functions we haven't defined, so let's sort that out. Can character jump, character base. This is I'm going to call this make this a protected one. So it's a bool can character jump const and a void has jumped. Now that we have both of those in there, these errors go away. Okay, so let's define these two functions. So now I'll start by saying we're not going to be doing anything specific with these. We're just going to be returning true here. Actually, I'm going to return can jump, which is that character class function. The reason for this is something that we're going to need later in the series. Yes, I could bypass these for now, but I wanted to tie these in. With that, we do have pretty much everything sorted out for our player character. So I'm going to run a build here. I'm half expecting there's going to be an error. So once this build is done, I'll either be back with the error visible and we'll work on that, or we'll be in the editor. All right, so I was pleasantly surprised there was no build error. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a couple of tweaks to get this set up to use that new character. So the first thing, I realize I pulled the content browser over, but we need to go into our project settings. Once this loads, pawn, I believe, where's a character? We want the default character. Am I in the right set? Game, asset management, instance, project maps and modes, that's it. Editor, project, maps and modes. Am I just being blind? It's right at the top here. Default game mode. Okay, they've done it in a blueprint, that's why. Okay, so pull that over. BP third person game mode. So in here we can see our default pawn is our BP third person character. So what we're going to need to do here, I'm going to go to our content browser. We're going to create our folder structure. Underscore GCG. The underscore just pushes it to the front. New folder, the fall. New folder, blueprints. And then this is going to be characters. And I'm going to put player in here as a subfolder. New blueprint class. Actually, I want to show something first. So if we go to our C++ classes, you can see we now have the fall and the fall characters. In here, we have character and TF player character. Now I'm going to be going through, TF character is going to become an abstract class. So that's going to be hidden in the future. But we can go TF player character. Select that. We're going to go BP underscore player character. We're going to open this up, and that's going to open up on my other monitor, I bet. Yes, it is. So now in here, you can see there's quite a few things that are off. Well, first thing we need to do is add a mesh. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that original third-person character blueprint just so we can grab some of this information here. We're going to go grab our mesh and select that. Oh, I hate how it does this. So I'm going to move my content browser out of the way just for the purposes of running through this. And I'm actually going to use the Mani Simple for this. And we're going to match our location there, which is -89 and a rotation of -90 on the z-axis. That's just facing it forward. The first person camera, we want that to have a +90 actually looking at this, so it's from behind. Compile that. Now you can see we've got most of the stuff here. The only thing we're missing is obviously our animations. So let's find our animation blueprint. Unarmed. Is this the one that's going to work? Yes. Now you can see the first person camera is connected to that. The next thing we want to do is mapping. Our default mapping context is not the same. I'm going to just pass in the original one, and I'm going to do actions here. And we can see our jump, move, and look. And we're going to just open those up as well. We want the jump action, the look action, and the move action. Actually, are they using the mouse look for that? Mouse look action. That's apparently... I might have missed something there. But we've got that out of the way, so let's close out of our project settings. We're going to hit play, and we're going to see what we have here. All right. So the reason why this isn't working is we haven't changed our blueprint for our game mode. Grab you and put you in as the default pawn class. Compile. Let's run and hit play here. Okay, our mouse look isn't working, so I believe that is the reason. Let's grab those. We want mouse look. There we go. And we're able to run around. Now we don't have our toggle perspective in place yet, so let's work on that. I didn't add an action for that actually. So I'm going to end things off here. This is the first of what's going to be a two-part, because I do want to go through and clean up the player character module a bit more. But we've got the basics. We've got the player character in the game. We're going to go through, get some of the other functionality in next episode. That's going to be things like our lean, getting some stuff in place for interaction. That's going to be precursor work for the next module that we work on, which is going to be this, I believe it's the equipment module. I had a poll up for it. So if you want to vote in that poll, though, feel free, hop over to the post sections on the channel, and in there I still have the poll active for what we're going to be doing for the next module. Feel free to vote on that, and I'm actually going to use the results of that for... nope, change that. Save on success only. So compile. Yeah. I'm going to use the results of that poll for the next module and the subsequent module. So it's going to use that to pick the next two that I'd work on after player character. So as always though, folks, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Hop over onto Discord and drop your comment there if you want. I do respond on Discord more frequently than I do to YouTube, just simply because I get Discord notifications better than YouTube. But as always, folks, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.